Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live Q&A with the author himself, Ken Burnett. I just give you a few minutes, I think, make sure the audience is there. I can see we do have some people in the audience, which is great. So the live stream is working. Ken, welcome to the live Q&A session. Good morning.
Michelle, good morning. Well, good afternoon to all of you in Australia, hopefully in New Zealand too. It's very early in the morning here.
Yes, it is absolutely very early in the morning for you. While we are waiting for more people to join us in the audience, if you are already in the audience, the way it works with our live Q&A is you must be using the Chrome browser. So if you are not using Chrome, you might find some of the buttons a bit funny on your end. This is the live studio. You should have a call button. Me and Ken are going to kick off with some questions that have come in already from some of the people. We've had quite a lot of questions. And we will, so when you want to join, if you've got a question for Ken, hit that green call button. I do need to let you know that this has been recorded. And if you do call into the studio, you will appear on the screen and you can ask Ken the question himself. And if you don't want to ask Ken, if you don't want to be on camera, put your questions into the chat. And this is being recorded, so we will share it afterwards. And remember, the best question goes in the draw to win a copy of Relationship Fundraising, which is, yes, I think people have been enticed by that free copy, Ken, because there's a couple of fun questions in here too.
Okay,
so,
good.
Yeah, there sure is. Let's kick off with some of the questions that have been sent in before. So, Simonic, a good friend of the Fundraising Nest, working at Wellington City Mission in New Zealand. She's going in with a big one at the very beginning. Ken, how do you maintain authentic relationships with donors when the demands for funding are constant and time, work pressure, work resources are limited? We want donors to feel appreciated and part of the journey rather than feel like hassled for donations.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Michelle. We all feel time pressured and hassled. You know, nobody likes that. So I think the key thing is we've got to let donors know that that's not what we want to be doing. And so, you know, it's really, I think that's, if you feel like that, then I suspect you're going to be doing it all right anyway, because you're sensitive and you're aware that that's not what you should be doing. I think donors know also that we've not got great resources and that we, you know, everybody who's ever supported a charity knows that charities need money as well. So the culture we have of kind of repeated, persistent asking, I don't think it has ever worked but particularly well. It really can put people off. And I think the real key is to be yourself and to be very sensitive. And, you know, to me, a good fundraiser has to have empathy and understanding. And if you treat people properly, if you're nice to people, they'll be nice to you back. It's, you know, really that's the kind of core of relationship fundraising. It's very, very simple.
Yes, you know, I've always said it as well, but they're donors. They're human people. They're us. They're just human.
Yeah. Well, they're us, maybe a little bit older. You know, they're kind of my age, kind of thing. And if you're polite and empathetic, people will warm to you. And it's about fundraisers. It's about being likable, to be quite honest. And I've sat in on dozens of fundraiser interviews, and I sometimes think, why are we talking to this individual? They're just not likable. You know, they're the kind of person that nobody's going to want to do business with. It's really important that fundraisers get on with people, and we do that by respecting the fact that donors don't have to be there, and they don't have to support our causes. So I think we have a duty to them to be as respectful as we possibly can. But they do know and understand the challenges that face our organizations. And I think if if you bear this question in mind, you will come across okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Em, for your question. A great one to kick it off. As I said, if you're in the audience, please, Em said, thank you so much, Ken. She's in the audience listening, which is wonderful. Thank you, Em.
Okay.
If you're in the audience, remember, just interrupt us at any point. You know how excited I get when we get a call into the studio. I will see your call coming in, and I will push the green button, and you can talk to Ken himself and ask Ken your questions. If you don't want to ask Ken your questions, pop them in the chat and I will ask them for you. And remember, the best question goes in the draw to win a copy of Ken's book. Okay, Ken, I'm moving on to Sarah Wiley, the Manager of Partnerships and Community Engagement for the Motor Neuron Disease Association of Western Australia, sent some questions in yesterday. Two, I really love her approach here. She's got one serious one and one fun question. So I'm going to kick off with the serious one. Sarah asks you, Ken, given the rapid evolution of digital platforms and social media, how can relationship fundraising principles be effectively adapted to maintain genuine connections with donors in an increasingly virtual world, especially when personal interactions are limited?
Okay, another good question. I don't think we should limit personal interactions. I think the more personal we can be, the better it will be. It will be for us. And I think the principles of relationship fundraising are absolutely unchanged by the arrival of the digital age. So when I wrote the first edition of relationship fundraising, the internet was barely dreamt of. There was no email. There was, none of those things were around, and it was all about dealing directly with people. And I mean, maybe I'm an old Luddite. Maybe, I'm the kind of person that I don't really get social media. I've just resigned from X because I think Elon Musk is weird.
Yes.
And I don't support an awful lot of things that I see on that. And there's a lot of things that I don't like about social media. There's a lot of great advantages, and I couldn't survive without email. But I don't think we, just because the world's gone digital, we don't have to throw out our normal conventions. Perhaps one of the most obvious of those is how we write to people and how we communicate, and being polite, using correct grammar and punctuation, and communicating effectively. And I don't think we have to throw those away just because the world's gone digital. We need to do it. We need the language of fundraising and the culture of being donor responsive and the donor based approach to the business of raising money.
Yeah, there's also some. Yeah, carry
The
on.
principles
Sorry,
are
Ken.
still the same, Michelle. I think that's what I would say. And doing the right things. These are the things that people remember and they take note of, and they may not say anything. They may not complain if you treat them, abruptly or inappropriately, but they will notice it. So,
Absolutely. And there's ways to use technology as well. My husband's a blood donor, and when we moved to Australia, they didn't do it in New Zealand, but he got a text message that said, your blood has just been used to save someone's life, like weeks after he gave blood, and it was a real simple text. But what a feeling to be told your blood has just been used, and I thought that is a brilliant way of using technology to maintain a relationship.
Yeah, I would worry that they would say my blood has got too much alcohol in it to be of any. But in get what you mean, I think that's a fantastic thing. Wonderful.
I use that. Sarah has mentioned and said, I use that example of how we can report impact in real time. So Sarah is in the audience too.
Good. Thanks for the question.
Awesome. And remember, do call in if you're watching. You do have to be using the Chrome browser. I know some people they might not have the options to call. We've had that issues before. The studio does require you to use Chrome, so if you're on an Apple device, please maybe log off and come back onto Chrome. If you can't see the green call button, you've got the green call button there, which means you can call into the studio. You will appear live and you can ask Ken your question himself. If not, put it in the chat. I'm going to go on to Sarah's second question, Ken, because she did say she had a serious one and a more fun one. And I do like this one. Sarah's definitely keen on getting the book. I love the fun questions. Ken, if you could host a fundraising dinner with any three historical figures known for their philanthropy, who would you invite and what unique fundraising tactic would you try out on them?
Okay, I think this is a fabulous question, and you know, full disclosure, Michelle did send this to me, so I've had a little bit of notice, and I'm glad of that because actually thinking who I would like to invite for dinner, for that fundraising dinner, is really quite challenging. But the first thing that I thought of when I saw Sarah's question was. There's a guy in Canada, a very great fundraiser called Harvey McKinnon, and Harvey's written several books which you may know of. And he's just recently brought out a book of high impact philanthropy. That's what it's called. And it's basically a compilation of quotable quotes from eminent, famous people. So the first thing that I thought of, and I do quote this in the new edition of Relationship Fundraising, is that I would invite Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, Aristotle, and the Buddha. And I would tell them that in Harvey's book of quotable quotes, if you take all the quotes attributed to the three of those great people, they don't add up to as many quotes as he has quoted from Dolly Parton. And I would just enjoy telling them that. I think so. I don't know. That doesn't really qualify quite as people I would. I mean, I don't know if any of those three guys are noted for their philanthropy, which was the other part. So I think, Sarah, I would rather turn your question on its head. I've got three other people I would like to invite. In fact, I'd like to have a big dinner party, and I'd like to have them all there. And the three people I would invite are Moses, King David, and Pliny the Younger. And if you know your Sophie historical site, Moses is credited with inspiring the very first fundraising campaign on record, which was when, with the children of Israel, he's wandering about the desert for years and years, and they wanted to raise money for a tabernacle, and basically people gave goods and jewels and clothing and a whole variety of things and money, and they were so successful in this campaign that they exceeded their target, and they had to return quite a lot of the gifts. And I think that's wonderful. So I would really like to take those.
Tabernacle.
A tabernacle is like a mobile church. It's like a portable church, and it's quite an elaborate affair actually. And so, but they exceeded their target, which I think is brilliant for the first recorded fundraising. And I think what I would like to ask these ancient philanthropists is, I'd like to ask them for advice and tactics and how they did this, because King David, who would be sitting listening to Moses explaining this, he would be able to say, well, listen, I held the first major donor dinner, and we raised the equivalent in money today of over $400 million. So, you know, I'd like to know how King David did that. This was for a temple for his son, Solomon the Wise. And the third one was Pliny the Younger. And Pliny is recorded as the first matching funds appeal, where he was trying to raise money for a school in Como in Italy. and they again more than achieved their target because they used matching funds, and then Pliny put up some money and Tacitus put up some money, and then they asked other people to match their gifts. So I would really enjoy that dinner with those three great sort of lions of early fundraising, and it just shows to me that we still can learn from fundraising if we understand our history and we know where we're coming from.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe
So
overcomplicated things.
the sobering message in Sarah's great question is that so many people don't understand where they've come from in historical terms.
Absolutely, Ken. Thank you for that question. A reminder again, if you're in the audience, please do call into the studio. Push that green button, and don't worry, me and Ken like to talk. Don't worry, interrupt us. We will stop for you if you call into the studio. Just push that green button, and I will take your call, and you can talk to Ken and ask him your question himself. We are obviously here today to discuss the third edition of Relationship Fundraising. And we've got some more questions from people that have been sent in. But before I carry on with that, I think it's a really good time to say to you, Ken, we all know that most of us around the world, and we did the book club with Leo the other day. If you haven't watched that, and Leo Orland, a familiar figure to all of us down this side of the world, says he doesn't understand why this book, every single fundraiser should have read this book or be told to read this book. So this is the third edition, Ken. Why a third edition, and why now?
Right. Good question, Michelle. I had no intention. I mean, it's 22 years since the second edition, and I had no intention. I'm a sort of one take guy. I don't like rehearsing, and I don't like doing things again. It really hadn't occurred to me, but I was invited to to address a conference in Italy, and I've done quite a few fundraising events around Europe and Italy several times. And generally speaking, I've found with Italy that love going to Italy, but the language issue is often a problem. And anyway, I went to this thing in Milan. It was 2 years ago, and I was amazed because so many fundraisers were coming up to me with dog-eared copies of my earlier editions, either the second edition or the first edition, or my book, The Zen of Fundraising, and they were asking me to sign them. And I was sort of thinking, wow, this is great. I actually, for my presentation at this conference, I was played on on stage by a band which included a tuba player. And I just couldn't believe this. And they played me on to the sound of Let It Be by the Beatles. And I thought, finally I've arrived, thank God.
I know
And
that's true. I think it did
is,
happen.
no, and I'm so proud. I'm so pleased about that. And just about the same time when I came back from that event, and so many of these Italian fundraisers have been so encouraging. A guy called Robert Kowalko, who's the president of the Fundraising Institute in Poland, contacted me and he said, "We've been given, there's no book in the Polish language about fundraising. There's nothing. And we've been given a grant by a foundation, and we want to translate one book. And the book we've chosen is Relationship Fundraising." And I said, "You're crazy, Robert. Sorry, I've heard from Sarah. She's just put up something on the screen which said I have to
Yeah,
come
if
here
you
to have dinner, and we can invite Moses and Buddha and Aristotle as well." Great. Thanks, Sarah. I'll take you up on that one of these days. Anyway, I was talking about Robert Kowalko, and he said that M's going to be there as well. Robert Kowalko said, he wanted to translate Relationship Fundraising. And I said, this book's been around for 30 years. Surely you can find something a bit more up to date. And he said, no, this is the book. And they did do it. They translated it. And the translator came back to, who's a non-fundraiser, knew nothing about fundraising, but she said after she read it that she wanted to be a fundraiser. And I thought that, the book has been in print, and it stayed in print, and it's still in demand. So I kind of was thinking, and I was asked by Jim Hilburn in Canada if they could produce the third edition. But the real reason actually is explained in the 15 appendices that I've added. I've added a lot of extra content because so much has changed in the last 20, 30 years that isn't in the first edition. So I've put in sections about a whole load of things like loyalty, like giving is good for you. I've updated the legacies section considerably, and all of those things. But there's also an urgency to this because we had such a crisis in the UK just a few short years ago, and the reason for that was. The reason for that actually made me feel that relationship fundraising actually, despite it being so well received, despite it being continuously in print and people telling me all sorts of nice things about it, it had actually been a failure because we have not changed the culture of fundraising. And I talk a lot about culture. I think culture eats strategy for breakfast. Fundraising organizations are always focusing on their strategy. And strategy is about what we want. And that's what's been wrong with fundraising. It's been about you give, donors, you give, we take. And we need to change that. It needs to be we give and they give and we both benefit. And they've got to benefit too. If giving is a good experience, donors will do more of it. If it isn't, they'll
100%.
soon stop.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
so the one thing that I didn't really, I think the whole of the first edition of Relationship Fundraising and the second were focusing on the donor experience, but I didn't explain it like that. I didn't package it as the donor experience. And I now believe that is the most important thing for fundraisers to focus on.
Absolutely. I'm stealing that one.
Yeah, no, now wait a minute. I have to say that's not an original from me.
It's quite a well-known one, that one for sure. Remember, look, Kenny's here. He is a lovely gentleman, as you can all hear. And please call in with your questions. And Ken is here to take your call. Did I just hear some beeping there? No, not at all. And Lachlan is our producer. He's in the background there, which is brilliant. And what he has done is pause the upload, which has given us much better quality. But it does mean nothing will be lost when we record it. So thank you, Lockie, who's working behind the scenes, making sure that we've got good quality for everyone.
Thanks, Lachlan. It was Peter Drucker who said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and do focus on that bit about culture. There's so much in that, and it will make, if we can get our organizational culture right, it will change everything. And I think it will help us to realize far greater potential for our fundraising efforts.
Absolutely. The problem here is, Ken, we all know that. The fundraisers are all going to read your book. We all know that. But, it's getting the message to the right people that's the biggest problem.
Well, I think you're right, and therefore we need to focus on aspects of culture such as leadership, and particularly among boards and senior management teams, and making sure that there's sufficient respect given to fundraising and fundraisers, and that they are truly valued within the organization and given the resources and given the time, and that people appreciate that it is a long-term relationship building activity and not just a series of quick hits and quick wins. And we really need to get that message across. We've not succeeded.
Absolutely. And this, if anything, the first couple of chapters of the new appendices if you don't already know, buy the book. But the Olive Cook scandal, there's a real sense of urgency from Ken in this revision, that if we don't, this particularly the rest of the world, it's all right for us to go, that happened there. But a real warning that if that happens, we're in trouble. So if it's by alarm that you get the attention of your leadership by saying, do you know this happened? Do you know why it happened and how we can stop it from happening? So maybe we go in with, that might get their attention in the terms of, what happened and what we, rather than trying to, plead with them of change, it's about actually avoiding what we know has happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to carry on with some more questions that have been sent in, but in the meantime, somebody call in. As you know, I know there's audience there. I can see you all there. Yeah, press that green button and give us a call. And there's such a...
I'm very, very gentle. I won't. I won't.
You
Bite.
are. You're a very gentle man. There's a great conversation going on between Sarah and Em, who've just connected on LinkedIn. And this is what the Fundraising Nest is all about: building a community of people that would just want to chat, big thinking stuff, that can join across the world. We've got the UK, New Zealand, Australia, learning about how to be better at what we do. So do call us in, interrupt me halfway through a conversation with Ken, or interrupt Ken, or he, we know he loves to talk, but for you, he will absolutely stop. Right, we have a few questions from Caroline, who is over in Aotearoa, New Zealand. The first question is, Ken, how are your fudge making skills these days?
Okay, but Michelle, should I explain the fudge
Yes.
connection? Okay, so I didn't realize this until comparatively a few years ago, certainly long after I'd written the second edition of Relationship Fundraising. But I really believe in reciprocity. I don't think that it's just that we're all about money. I think we've got to give as much as we get. And I actually learned this, and I didn't realize it until far too late. But I learned this when I was about 6 or 7 years old from my mother. And my mother was a volunteer for the childcare organization, Dr. Bernardo's Homes. And uh, she her job was she was a volunteer, and in our town she had the job of placing the Bernardo's home collecting box in as many households as possible, and then twice a year she'd put an announcement in the local paper, and people would bring in their boxes to be counted. And my job, they'd be emptied onto our kitchen table, and my job was to count the money. And this was, I think, probably where I learned my love of money. But it's quite a lot of money would be emptied onto our kitchen table. But the trouble was that lots of other charities were doing the same kind of thing. There was a lot of competition about placing boxes. So my mother had a brilliant idea. She made the very best fudge. Now, if you're Scottish, fudge is almost like a national religion. So my mother made the very best fudge in the.
Was it a tablet?
It was, well, I've never really understood the difference, Michelle. But we called it. We're from the Highlands. We called it fudge.
Yeah.
And it's really delicious, So everybody who brought that, she let it be known that if you brought in your Bernardo's collecting box, you would get a piece of my mother's famous fudge. And this absolutely worked. And I have a clear memory of people coming clutching their Dr. Bernardo's boxes and queuing out our front door, down the garden path, out the front gate, down the road, round the corner, queues of people, big people, little people, medium people, all clutching their boxes. So I was having to work twice as hard at counting the money because there was so much more of it. And I thought, well, if they get a piece of fudge for bringing it in, I should get a piece of fudge for counting it. And so my mother actually grew to be the most successful fundraiser in the north of Scotland for Dr. Bernardo's Homes. And I grew to be a very large school child because I was eating too. because I was taking a piece. Every time they brought it in, I got a piece too. But the point was reciprocity, and it absolutely works, because as soon as you start giving generously to your donors, will give back. And I've always believed that, we fundraisers focus on asking, but it's much more powerful if the donor is kind of champing at the bit, saying, when can I give? I'd like to support this cause. What do I do?
Tell me, have you taken fudge? Have you charmed anyone with fudge?
Um, I have in the past. I was going to answer Caroline's question. I don't make fudge nowadays because I've got to worry about my waistline. One of the things, when I'm over 40 now, and I've got to watch my waistline, and so fudge is just one of those pleasures that's been denied me. But I try and find other things.
Yeah,
So
and I know that we've had Amanda's been trying to call in and had some difficulties. Amanda, we're sorry for that. The program, the software that we use does ask for a Chrome browser, so that might be some of the problems. I do know you can ring in on your phone, and sometimes that's a bit tricky. But do try.
just 2 seconds.
Yes, I know where Ken is going because I know what one of these questions are. When Ken gets back,
I was going to. How do you know? No, what?
You have in your hand. You do, because this was Caroline's third question. Ken, do you still have a Bernardo's wee cottage? And look at that.
Well, the thing is, Michelle, I remember you asked me about this when you came and visited me, and of course I've got it, and it's an icon, and it's a reminder to me of something that's fundamentally important to fundraising. If you want to get, you first of all have to give.
Can I say honestly, those when I have been your fan and got to come to your coming to stay with you last year, and then seeing that Bernardo's box as I was going up to the art studio in your house was just like this moment, because I think for people that know that story, know how important the Bernardo's box is, and then to see it, it's just so lovely. And Caroline had one other question before we've got one here in the chat too. I really like this question too, Caroline. Who would you say are telling good stories today, Ken?
Oh, loads of fundraisers have got, we've got the best stories in the world to tell, and we've got the best of, I keep saying this, we've got the best of reasons for telling them well. I still think that if you want to be 15 minutes ahead of your competitors,
Yeah,
work on your storytelling skills. I do actually also have a book called Storytelling Can Change the World. It's just that I need to keep my children in shoes and food and the things that my children like. Sorry, what was the question? Who's telling good stories? I'm stopped. I'm retired now. Really, I was supposed to be. I'm making pots, Michelle. I'm a potter now.
yes.
And that I find very relaxing and good. But I've recently been working with an organisation in the UK called the National Youth Orchestra, and they had almost no donors when we started, and now they've got about 10,000, I suppose, by now. And they have found that they, we work on getting people to tell their stories as powerfully as they can. And they've, oh, thanks, Em. That's great.
Ken talking about your storytelling can change the world. She won it at the in one of our recent little competitions we did.
Yeah, people never buy my books. They'll never win them in competitions.
What went first?
But National Youth Orchestra, what they did was they got members of the orchestra, which is a moving thing because people are only in the orchestra for a relatively short couple of years, maybe. But they write to the donors and they tell their own personal stories about their struggles, sometimes having to learn, having to practice, because the excellence, I mean, the National Youth Orchestra plays in the proms at the Albert Hall, in London. They are world class. Well, they're considered to be about the best youth orchestra in the world. Ianthe is in the audience. Great, Ianthe, lovely to hear from you. Wonderful. Right, there are questions coming up, Michelle. I'm not sure. Should I answer?
Answer it. And this
Ensure our donors, but sorry, that's the question's gone already.
again, you reminded us to ensure our donors benefit, not just the organisation. Can you give us some examples of what donors see as benefit? And that's from Amanda, who was trying to call into the studio, which
Amanda, right.
her face on screen. So thank you, Amanda. So examples of what donors see as a benefit.
Well,
Great.
the thing is, I suspect most donors don't think of it in that way, that they will benefit. And I would like to change that, because I would like people to realize that actually being a donor is great. And it's great because it's really good for you. So there's a whole new section in this book about giving is good for you, and I'm focusing on the work of particularly a woman called Dr. Tara Swart from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and she works with senior executives, and she's been doing a lot of research into the benefits and the importance of what she calls mindful giving as part of the lifestyle of the rich and successful, I suppose. That if you're looking for well-being and a rounded life, you need to consider giving, because there's lots of concrete evidence. In fact, if you look on the National Health Service website in the UK, they list 5 things that contribute to your health, and one of those, I think number 4, is giving. Giving is good.
It's helping someone, or helping a friend in need. It's time, money, experience.
It's the sense of completeness. It's the feeling of achievement. I have done something worthwhile, and we can tell. We can tell stories. I've so often spoken to people about putting out information to supporters, and the internet is great for that, because you can do it relatively low cost and you can do it immediately, and you get supporters in tears saying, "I'm so, I too have been through that situation. I'm so understand. I feel so great to have been able to contribute in this, to this cause that I believe in." And this is why things like defining your why, and getting your culture right and things like that. These things are so important. But just in how we tell our stories, good stories are great. And I think if you think about our targets, to be a donor, you have to have disposable income. So we tend to fish in a relatively narrowly defined pond, and we think of, Mrs. Dorothy Donor, and she's of a certain age, she's relatively well educated, she's comfortably off, the kids have left home, she's paid off the mortgage, and she wants to be as useful as possible. And people, when they reach retirement, which is a major place where you will find donors, it's all changed now. It's not the kind of the slow decline that people like me are experiencing. It's people, when they retire, have all sorts of interests, and they're looking forward to doing things. And one of the things they all say is, "I would like to make a difference in this world of travels. I would like to do something meaningful. I would like to be useful to people." Everybody wants to be appreciated. Everybody wants to be useful. And if we can play to that, we can offer people. We've got such a potentially powerful offer.
Yep.
And what we're doing is we're chasing people down the street for direct debits.
Absolutely.
We're focusing on transactions, and we're persistently. And quite recently, I remember being told, you can put 17 asks on the first page of a direct mail letter. sorry, that's rubbish. That's just taking us down the wrong direction. So, yeah,
I mean, yeah,
the
I think we had this
the pros
conversation.
and
Yeah,
benefits. You'll find a lot about benefits for donors,
in the book.
and the process of building loyalty in your donors.
Yes.
That's a really big new area that I didn't particularly focus on in the past, and I've had some great help from some of the people who are pioneering these areas. But if I were a young lad again, if I had my time again in fundraising, um, uh, and I would continue to work in fundraising, that's for sure. I would focus on the benefits of giving to the donor, because I really think that's we're just in the foothills of discovering the potential that's
I
in them.
mean, yeah, but it's like a double, not only because of you, you have made this happen,
Yep.
and you've done this for yourself, and as us in the middle, I mean, what an amazing opportunity to be in, to be able to say to a donor, because of you, this thing is going to happen, but this thing will also happen to you.
Yeah. Well, we are the double agent between the the donor and the cause, and we connect the two, and it's that calls for so much skill and personality and qualities and attributes. It's a very challenging job, and one of the other things that I focus on is I'm really alarmed. I would love to see an improvement in retention of fundraisers, because retention of donors is one of our biggest challenges. We still lose people far too quickly. They will give a single gift, and that's the last we'll hear from half of them. And then even those that do give a second gift, we just are not keeping our customers in commercial terms as long as we could and we should. But one of the key components of that is that we're not keeping our fundraisers. The turnover, the average tenure of fundraisers is far too short. Now it's time that we did something about that. And one of the things we need to change is that there's absolutely no requirement for a fundraiser to know anything, or they can be unleashed on donors without any particular preparation. And we need to change that. So actually keeping us recognizing that this is one of the best jobs going, and we need to do it and we need to make sure that our people are fully equipped to do it. So I've put a lot of that into relationship fundraising, which some of it was there before, but there's new stuff on that as well.
It's absolutely critical, and I still the opportunity to learn this from experiences from each other, to kind of, I quote you all the time on this one, but what's the difference between a merely good and truly great fundraiser? Is that the truly great fundraiser knows more. That's all. It's simple. I know that was in quote.
Absolutely, Michelle. I mean, that's why my late wife Marie and we started the Sophie Foundation back in 2007, and this is really our gift to the future of fundraising, because and I've tried to put as much in Sophie. I mean, other people are running it now, including brilliant Heather Little and Meredith Niles, and some really wonderful people have picked up the mantle for the Sophie Foundation. But actually making information freely and easily available and accessible and readable and interesting and fun.
Yeah.
That I think is really important. But I still go round and I find people say, "What's that?" I've never heard of the Sophie Foundation. Thanks, Linda. Thank you.
If you haven't, jump on Sophie. It is absolutely, and we will in the community hub. We've got things on for Sophie in there. We will also be sharing links to the book with this video if you're watching it on a recorded. We've probably got about another five or so minutes with Ken. Do not waste this opportunity to call in and ask Ken your question. Remember, for the most, his favourite question goes in.
I'd love to hear from a real Australian fundraiser, because Michelle's not Australian. She's,
I'm a Kiwi, I'm a Scottish Kiwi. I need to change that to an Aussie one, but
The
yeah.
Aussie, that's right.
Yeah.
Actually, Michelle, I've got a sneaky suspicion that it's just you and me that's here,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
and
You're here by calling in, and that
really exists. This is just
actually well.
you're,
I,
you're stalking me, Michelle. That's what it
yes,
is.
yes, I'm just yeah, I absolutely am. So if you're in the audience, give us a call and ask Ken a question. We have another new message down here. Ian, Ian, I assume that is Ian McQuillan is here.
And you're not allowed to be here, Ian McQuillan. That's not allowed.
And
Okay, Sarah, I believe you. I believe you, Sarah.
that is Ian McQuillan, I believe, that will be in the audience there. Because Ian, I'm just about to record an interview with Ian after this. So, Ian, I assume that is who is here. If there's any last final questions for Ken, do call them in. I'm just going to go back to one that I saw comment earlier in the stream. This is from the Delightful AM. Another question for Ken. What is the most memorable donor relationship you've had, and what made it special?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I, I tell you what was a really special thing for me. I don't know if you know, but 2 years ago, with my new partner, we walked the Camino de Santiago de Compostela in Spain, which was the Camino Frances, which is from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France, right the way across the north edge of Spain, the old pilgrimage route to Santiago. 39 days of walking, a total of 500 miles, 800 kilometers. And I've I was planning to do this, really as a kind of a fitness thing. Can I still do this in my advanced years? And Ginny, my partner, said, "Why don't you get sponsored?" And so I had the task of actually contacting a whole lot of people who I knew and worked with and inviting them to sponsor me. And we actually raised £26,000 for Sophie, which was really wonderful, and including some really amazing. And I had the job then of providing updates
Good.
through the travel, including how I washed my socks while
You
traveling.
did a good job.
Yes, it was tremendous, actually, because you were a sponsor, Michelle.
It was.
Yeah, that's right. And I just had so many kind of interactions, including one guy in America, in Atlanta, whose company put up $10,000 matching funds to kick off my fundraising efforts, which I thought was just wonderful. So, I mean, I've met so many inspirational donors and really thoughtful donors, really challenging donors. When we were doing the commission on the donor experience, I was introduced by Beth Breeze from the University of Kent to a guy called David Gold, who is a wonderful donor and who was absolutely critical during the Commission on the Donor Experience. But I think it was my interactions with the people who were actually sponsoring me. But there's also, if I can draw your attention to it, there's an article in the new book called "It's Never Too Late to Do Something Wonderful." And it's about me and my son and my wife rattling tins on Bond Street Station for Syrian refugees, and the interactions with donors face to face. Then I think makes a great story. So plenty of opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And I'm going to get, I'm going to add one last request for anyone to phone in. But here is the book. Lachlan has done an amazing job as the producer. He's popped up your YouTube channel of your walk. He's got Sophie there. He's got Hillborn Press. All of those links will be shared in the recording. And do we have any final calls? Sounds like an auctioneer. Ken, what we're going to do now is...
I'm going to go back to bed, Michelle. It's still 7, it's not yet 8 o'clock in the morning.
I know, you're doing great. You're doing well ever. Ken, I'm going to decide what was your favourite question?
It's very difficult. I mean, some of them were they were all great. They're all great, and there's no such thing as a bad question. I think the one where I'm inviting people to dinner would have to take it. I'm kind of tempted between that and the fudge story. It's a very close thing. If it was up to me, I'd give them all prizes. But I think
that means that I think that means that's incredible, Ken. Thank you so much. I'm in awe of you. Just to know, it's been a real dream talking to you online. So you have won the book. You were the book. Leo always says to me, "What? Can you say that word again?" Oh, there she goes, Sarah. You have.
Okay, wow. Well done. Thank you.
The one that asked about fundraising dinner, and you have won yourself. And it's a special one because it'll have Ken's signature, digital signature inside it too. So it's even extra special. So
some money on eBay eventually. Hold on to it.
And a big thank you from Sarah. Listen, thank you everyone who has joined us today. I know it's been a delight having Ken. Thank you for joining us from the UK. You've given the Fundraising Nest so much of your time. As you know, we are supporting Ken's book and making sure that it gets out to you at a lower cost and quicker than it might do.
Can I just say, I really want to thank you and Corey and Precision for... You've done something which I think is truly inspirational. The cost of getting my books to Australia would have been quite prohibitive, and it's a crazy business. There's no real viability in producing books for such limited quantities, and for you guys to print the volume of books that you have printed in Australia free of charge, I think is just remarkable and a great gift I hope it's a great gift, if that's not too immodest to claim, for Australian and New Zealand fundraising. I think it's just a wonderful thing. And you, Michelle, made that happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm good at relationships because I've been taught by a good teacher,
Right. Okay.
we do have the Scots are good at charming people, aren't they, Ken?
Of course they are.
Yeah, I do. And just we've got another message from Yancy, who I know has already got your book. Really enjoy reading the new book. That's wonderful. Fantastic.
Thanks, Yancy. All best to you.
It has been a joy and a pleasure. Do join us for our next live Q&A. I'm going to push a little plug for the very first fundraising, the Fundraising Nest event. The Nest Fest Down Under is 2 weeks on Monday in Melbourne. We've got Ian McQuillan coming from the UK. We've got Lynn Wester coming from the States. We've got amazing speakers based here in Melbourne and around Australia. Then we're taking them over to New Zealand. So please register. There's 2 weeks left for registrations. So do come and join us at the first ever Nest Fest one-day event in Melbourne. Ken, thank you so much. Until next time, we will catch up. And everyone, go and get yourself a copy of this book. If you want to be the best fundraiser you can possibly be, there is no other choice. This is the only way that we are going to be able to sustain fundraising and do what we should be doing properly.
Thank you.
Ken, I'm going to say to you while we're still live, because we've paused the recording, I'm going to stop recording, but don't go anywhere because we need you to stay there to upload what's been going on. So just don't move and I will stop. We'll say goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.